Hi everyone, and welcome to vlog number 4. So earlier this week I touched a lot on basically like what happened in, Angels in America. And so I'm going to respond to a couple of things some other students said about the episodes, as well as touch more on the reading from the Gentrification of the Mind, Part 2. So basically, when I was reading through, I could kind of relate to a lot of what the author was saying based on being an artist in New York City. And artists need creativity to, thrive. They need an active environment to thrive and to drive their creativity. And if there's nothing there, then it's really hard to progress with your art and with your craft, because that's where you get inspiration from, is the world around you. You don't want to be just a well-rounded, person in your craft, but you want to be a well-rounded individual and really be able to learn from the environment around you, which is really what was happening during the AIDS epidemic, is that there was so much changing and communities were changing, and people's views on what was right and wrong and accepted and not. So a lot of what she said was how gentrification caused, prices of living to increase so rapidly that, it was driving artists out of communities, and it was driving, just society essentially in a whole different direction. And so I can imagine now being a young artist and moving to New York City with no name whatsoever. It's difficult to become something out of nothing, but even then it was, harder, especially with everything else going on. And so that brings us to the idea that, not only did artists learn from what was going on around them, but they learned a lot from LGBTQ communities during that time, because that's really where the drive of change was happening. So, it's like artists gained inspiration from them, but it also allowed people in those communities to have a voice and to be heard, and to allow artists, whether they are or not part of those communities, to really just, speak their minds about things in a positive way and in a, expression that isn't going to get them ridiculed. Sometimes it did, but most of the time it was a safe way to express their emotions about what they were feeling. So it was basically, just a very tough time. So now I'm going to comment on a couple things that I heard. So after, I rewatched a couple parts of the episodes of Angels in America. I also, went through and listened to a couple other people's blogs. And Brooke Wood was someone I could kind of relate to on, her thoughts on the show, and just kind of, how things developed. So I agree with her that I think the climax of the show kind of happened when Joe and Louis kissed. It was kind of a turn for both of them, kind of like a new chapter opening or a new door opening in their lives, allowing them to kind of be like, oh, so this is who I was, but this is who I could be now if I, make X, Y, and Z changes. I think that Louis is definitely really struggling, and he's essentially, sabotaging himself. And, based off of his own life struggles that he's having with Pryor, he's like, well, he went through this phase where he was like, maybe I shouldn't be happy because Pryor's not happy, and maybe I shouldn't be able to live my life because, the life I had with Pryor is, going downhill. And it's like Louis knows Pryor's dying, but that doesn't mean he has to go downhill with him. And I don't really think he realized that until, episode number 4, when, or episode number 3, when he was talking to his friend at lunch, and they left lunch, and he was like, listen, he's like, Pryor's dying. And Louis was like, I know. And I think at that point, it was kind of like, I don't have to die with him. I can kind of continue my life and live my life and, develop from there. I also really agree that the real world, situations, so if you look at, stereotypes and how stereotypes have changed throughout time, it's like you look at Joe. He's, you know, the conservative Republican voted for Reagan, you know, homosexuality is a sin in his life, and all of a sudden he calls his mom and tells her that he's a homosexual. And I think for him, that really was just like, I don't have to be what everyone else thinks I'm going to be. And I think that, you know, nowadays it's like you look left and right and there's, you know, such a wide variety of people and colors of people and who they are and who they want to be. And, you know, back then it was hard to admit to yourself who you were. And nowadays you have, you know, people as young as 12 years old admitting to themselves who they are because they just know. And I think that it's really interesting to see the contrast between what things were and what things are now and how they've developed so much in such a short period of time. But I'm really looking forward to seeing how things turn out, and I will see you all next week.